Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon from Bangkok. Today's sessions will be the 8th episode of Tilleke Gibbins webinar series. This is about plant variety protection and rules on access and benefit sharing of plant genetic resources in Thailand. This presentation will be hosted by me, Chaithiraphant, Senior Associate, and Dr. Jakkrit Kuanpoth, our Off Counsel. We welcome you with great delight. This presentation will cover the outline of Thailand's plant variety protection or PVP procedures and the Thai access and benefit sharing procedures or ABS procedures. Basically, in our short period, we'll cover the diverging paths of the PVP procedure, which is based on whether the plant to be protected is on the official eligible list and whether the seeds or propagating materials must be imported to Thailand. There is also another important diverging path for the terms of protection, which will be decided by whether the plant will produce the yields within the 2 years and whether the plant is a timber tree. And likewise, there is a diverging path regarding the ABS procedure, which will be decided on whether the research activity is commercial or not commercial. Without further ado, I'll cover the first part, and Dr. Jakkrit will cover the second part about ABS. Right, it happens that both procedures are governed by the same legislation, which is the Plant Variety Protection Act 1999 or PVPA, in which the PVP procedures are covered by sections 12 to 42, while the ABS procedures are covered by sections 52 and 53, along with the implementing ministerial regulations promulgated under the authority given by these sections. We would like to address one frequently asked question here, that Thailand is presently not a party to the UPOF Convention. So here's the only governing law regarding PVP in Thailand. Part 1, regarding PVP. The subject matter of PVP protection is, of course, naturally plant variety. It is defined in the Act as a group of plants having substantially same genetics and botanical features, and having individual properties which are uniform, stable, and distinct from the other groups of the same plant type. The right of plant breeders over the plant variety is called the plant breeders' rights. It is defined in the Act as exclusive rights to do the following acts relative to the protected new plant varieties propagating materials. Propagating materials are seeds, tubers, etc., as applicable to plant variety. The acts subject to the exclusive rights are produce, to distribute, to import, and to export the materials. The rights will be evidenced by a PBR certificate or a nickname, a plant patent. The main regulators and authorities involved with the PVP procedures are Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperative, or MOAC, Department of Agriculture, or DOA, Plant Variety Protection Office, or PVP Office, and finally, Plant Variety Protection Committee, or PVP committees. The indentations are based on there being the higher authority and a lower authority, according to the legislation. First, let us begin with the first requirement that will affect the pathway of PVP procedures, which is whether the plant, the subject matter plant is currently listed as eligible for protection. The MOAC will from time to time consider and declare more types of plants as eligible for PBR protection. And there are currently 107 plants on the list as of August 2024. A plant not on the current list cannot be applied for the PBR certificate yet. But for those who are interested, may file a petition with the PVP committee, and PVP committee will consider such a petition. And if they agree with the petition, the committee will pass the matter as a recommendation to the Minister of Agriculture and Cooperatives to announce a new plant that will be added to the list. And after that, the new entry to the list will apply to the same type of plants, regardless of the variety, until that announcement has been officially cancelled. It will apply to all the plants within the same type. Next is the novelty requirement. It is a commercial novelty, which means the plant variety seeking protection must not have been used, sold, or distributed anywhere in the world under the plant breeder's consent for longer than 1 year before the application date. And fresh DUS field trials must be conducted in Thailand under the protocols and requirements as published by the DOA. One of the frequently asked questions is whether the foreign PVP results are applicable in Thailand, and the answer will be unfortunately no. The fresh trials must be conducted every time in Thailand. Tests will be tested for distinctiveness, meaning that the variety must have a characteristic that is different from the existing varieties. For uniformity, which means the variety's individual plant expresses the characteristic consistently. And the third is for stability, which means such characteristic must be consistent and retained in the later generations of the plant. So the overview of the procedure is like this. It's a very simplified overview, assuming straightforward case and all the steps are cleared. It begins with the applicant filed applications along with supporting documents. The PVP office, which is a receiving office, will review the application dossier. And if the formality and documentary requirements have been met, the PVP office will notice the applicant to deliver the propagation material for the field trials. And assuming that the field trials has been cleared, then the applicant will notice that the test has been passed and pay the publication fee within the time limits. And upon the payment, the PVP office will publish the applications for the third party to review it. And if there is any, and if a third party has any grounds for opposition, the third party must file the opposition document within 90 days after the publication date. Passing the publication or opposition, if applicable, it will be in good standing for registration. And the PVP office will notice the applicant to pay the registration fee. After that, the PBR certificate will be granted and issued. For foreign plant breeders, more steps will be involved in the process, because in that case, the seeds or other propagation materials must be imported from overseas, which means those materials must must receive clearance under the Plant Act and Plant Quarantine Act. Plant Act governs the importation and to some extent the distribution of commercial plants within Thailand. The main purpose of Plant Act is about quality control and regulations of commercial activities regarding the commercial plant within Thailand. And the Plant Quarantine Act, its main purpose is about control of plant pests and disease, which could be introduced to Thailand via the importation process. So the relevant documents like phytosanitary certificates and certificate of origin and such must be submitted with the Thai customs to clear all those importation shipments under those two acts. And if the clearance has been passed, then the applicant must deliver the propagation material to the PVP office for the field trials. And here's another branching point, which is the terms of protection. Basically, if the plant variety yields the intended product for longer than 2 years after plantation, and it is also a timber tree, then the protection term will be maximum of 27 years from the issuance of certificates. This is a bit different from patent, from invention patent, because in the case of invention patent, protection term will begin from the filing date, but for the PPR certificate, it will begin from the grant and issuance of the certificate. If the plant yields the produce for longer than 2 years after plantation, but that plant is not a timber tree, then the protection term becomes 17 years from the issuance date. And in the final case, if the plant yield the produce within 2 years after plantation, regardless of whether being a timber tree, the protection term will become 12 years after the issuance of the certificate. Next is the part about the access and benefit sharing of plant genetic resources. Dr. Jakkrit, the floor is yours now. I'll take control of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Khun San. Good afternoon from Thailand, everyone. I hope you enjoy our presentation so far. Khun San has done a good job highlighting the main part of plant variety protection under Thai law. Let me add a little bit of details to that in terms of providing an overview of the plant variety protection regime in Thailand. Khun San has mentioned that most the country that join the international agreement for the protection of plant varieties, the so-called UPOF Convention, would adopt the law that are in line with the framework of the UPOF Convention. Thailand is not yet a party. For this reason, when the law was adopted in 1999, Thailand was not obliged to comply its law to the UPOF standards. For this reason, it adopted its own sui generis regime of plant variety protection as it deemed appropriate at the time. Thai law on plant variety protection can be divided into two parts. One part, the first part, is for the protection of new varieties of plants. As Khun San mentioned, the new variety of plants must fulfill the requirements of the US plus novelty. That means that a new plant variety to be registrable, it has to be a novel in the sense that it's not been commercialized prior to filing an application. Second, it must meet the distinctiveness requirement and meet the uniformity requirement and stability requirement. So the US requirement has to be tested, as Kun San has elaborated. So now, when you have successfully registered and you would enjoy the exclusive rights for the protection of the new plant varieties, the term of protection was already mentioned by Kun San. So it divides into 3 periods, depending on the type of the new plant varieties that sought protection. And that is the first part. Now I'm going to move your attention to the second part of the law. The UPOF regime does not provide this part, and the UPOF member may not adopt this part of legislation into its national law. Thailand, as I mentioned at that time, consider whether it should fulfill the requirements of its obligation under the Convention on Biological Diversity, the CBD, that provides the mechanism for the protection of plant genetic resources, or the PGRs. Plant genetic resources under the UPOF, under the CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity, are regulated by national legislation. And Thai law incorporated the CBD regime into the UPOF regime, so combined it into 2 parts. That means that Thai plant variety protection law not only provide the protection or registration of new plant varieties, but it also provide regulation to regulate access and benefit sharing of its plant genetic resources. I'm now going to elaborate in details of what the Thai law Plant Variety Protection Act provides in terms of access and utilization of Thailand's plant genetic resources. Okay, for the access and benefit sharing of plant genetic resources in Thailand, the law divides the plant genetic resources into 2 major types. One is so-called wild plant varieties. A second is common or general local plant varieties. For the first one, wild plant varieties refers to a plant variety which currently exists or used to exist in the natural habitat and has not been commonly cultivated. In other words, any kind of plants that's found in Thailand would be categorized as wild plant varieties, even though it exists in nature and has not been commercially or commonly cultivated or grown. Secondly, it also deals with common local plant varieties, or put it that way, you can call it general domestic plant varieties. That means that genetic materials that originating or existing in the country and commonly exploited and include plant variety which is not new plant variety, a local plant variety or wild varieties. I mean that any kinds of plants would be subject to ABS or access benefit sharing regimes in Thailand. So there are 2 columns here on the slides. Here, the first one provide definition of wild plant varieties naturally exist in Thailand, not highly cultivated. And the other one existing in Thailand, widely used, and including those not falling within the other classification under PVPA. In other words, any kind of plants would be subject to the APS requirements. Before mentioning the procedures for obtaining the permit for access and benefit sharing, let me mention that now the concept of regulation of plant genetic resources or biodiversity resources have been widespread due to the adoption of two major international agreements. One, as I already mentioned, Convention on Biological Diversity, and following with its protocol, the Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing. These two international agreements provide for the sovereign rights of state to regulate biodiversity resources. It's broader than plant genetic resources because biodiversity or bioresources would cover biological materials, genetic resources that may derive from living organisms other than plants, including animals, microorganisms, or even human extracts like human genetic materials, for example, genes and others. However, in Thailand, Thailand doesn't adopt a comprehensive legislation dealing with all those biological resources. So unlike other countries that perhaps has passed the law protecting biodiversity, so-called biodiversity acts like the law of India and others, Thailand only has separate laws dealing with specific types of biological resources. And Plant Variety Protection Act here that we are looking into only provide protection, access, benefit sharing for plant genetic resources only. That means that there are still gaps that Thai law still do not have legislation or regulation dealing with other types of biological resources, such as animal microorganisms, for example. So this Plant Variety Protection Act only protect plant genetic resources. Okay. Now we talk about the procedures. The access benefit sharing or ABS regime in Thailand could be divided into two forms. One dealing with those who intend to access plant genetic resources for commercial purposes. And the other regime would be access for non-commercial purposes. Let us start with commercial ABS procedures. This is quite a stringent requirements for the access to plant genetic resource in Thailand for commercial purposes. It applies to all types of plants, as I mentioned, and those who seek ABS permit must require Department of Agriculture's permit in order to prior to the collection, the use, or do studying plant breedings or research activities on those genetic resources. And the permit has to be filed with certain requirements to be fulfilled. We call it the form called Kuanpoth 12. That means that applicant has to submit form Kuanpoth 12 with all the requirements, required documents provided. So in addition to submitting the form, the law also requires the applicant to submit an agreement, an ABS agreement, access and benefit sharing agreements. This agreement intended for benefit to be shared with the Thai government or the Thai state when the targeted plant genetic resources have been commercialized and earn specific profits, there must be the sharing of the profits between the Thailand, the government, and the applicant, those who utilize or the recipient of the plant genetic resources. So under the ABS agreement, the applicant has to provide these terms. First, activities and objective for the utilization for the access of genetic resources. Plant variety samples in terms of when the applicant has collected, they have to provide samples to the Department of Agriculture for collection. The obligations, intellectual property owners who will own intellectual property rights relating to plant genetic resources of Thailand. The benefit sharing provisions, the covenants in terms of the amount, the rate, the duration, this has to be specified and negotiated between the parties before the permit has been provided. The expiry and termination of the agreement, dispute resolution when the dispute has arisen. And Department of Agriculture rights to execute unilateral amendment, for in terms of when there's a public interest arising, such as in case of the use of the plant genetic resources for public health, safety, environmental, and other issues. So this one has been scrutinized and approved by Department of Agriculture. So the applicant will have to sign the ABS and then before the permit has been issued. And you can see that the access and benefit sharing permit on commercial basis is quite involve the strict requirements before a permit can be granted. There's another regime in the next slide. I'll show the regime of non-commercial ABS procedures. This one is quite straightforward because the intention for the access to Thailand's plant genetic resources are for non-commercial purposes. That means generally those who seek access are a non-profit organization like university, research institution. We at Tilleke and Gibbins have received consulting questions from our clients from time to time in terms of when they seek collaboration with research institutions, educational institutions in Thailand, and they want to gather, collect plant genetic resources for research purposes. Can they seek permit approval based on ABS, non-commercial ABS? I think this is quite straightforward. So long as the intention of the agreement is for non-commercial purposes, then the approval is almost granted automatically. So long as all the documents are completely provided, then the Department of Agriculture will issue a certificate of receipt to the applicant, and then the applicant can start to collect and use. We would recommend any parties who may seek to get approval for access to plant genetic resource in Thailand to start with non-commercial ABS application first. And then when they find the potential of the research result, when develop plant breeders or the biological products that may have potential benefit, commercial benefit, then the permit may be converted to the commercial one. that could save a lot of time in terms of starting with very difficult to get permit. And then if you start with non-commercial ABS procedures, which could be approved easily, and then when you fulfill all the studies and find a potential result, then we can convert the non-commercial permit into the commercial ABS application. So one of the points that I would like to mention is that there is a sanctions under the law. We know that the ABS regime in Thailand is quite stringent. Together with, they have criminal sanctions for those who circumvent the requirements of the law by not seeking legislations. That means that anyone who gather, collect, or access to project resources without fulfilling the requirement under the PBP Act may be subject to criminal sanctions. One of the issue that I would like to highlight before I conclude my presentation is that the law entered into force in 1999. There have been project resources that were collected prior to that year, 1999. For example, project resources have been collected and kept in the gene banks outside Thailand. That means that if those genetic resources such as light germplasms or other plant germplasm that have been kept in the gene banks outside Thailand, those genetic resources are not subject to the ABS regime under the current law. However, if the plant genetic resources have been collected after 1999, so the ABS requirement come into place, and those who seek access need to fulfill the requirement under the current law. Okay, that's all for me about the ABS requirement under Thai Variety Protection Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jakkrit. And I think it's a good time that we close this webinar session, number 8 of 2024 for Tilleke and Gibbins. We thank you, audiences, for your attention, and we hope our presentation has been helpful to you and your business in Thailand. And if there is any further questions, you can ask by emailing to us, and we'll be very happy to answer any of your inquiries. After you have provided your feedback in the link accessible by the QR code just now, you will receive the presentation material for your future references. Please stay tuned for our future TNG webinar series, which I hope will be very much helpful to you. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again later sometime.
Thank you. Bye-bye.